The galaxy thought humanity had one fleet. Earth had been hiding 3. 10 years had passed since the day the sky opened above Geneva, and a silver ship the size of a small moon settled into low orbit around Earth. That day changed everything. The people of Earth learned they were not alone, far from it. The galaxy was full of life, full of empires, full of old wars and older grudges, and humanity was, in the eyes of most of these civilizations, a very young and very small species that had just walked into a room full of giants. The aliens who made first contact called themselves the Valari. They were tall, calm, silver-skinned beings who spoke in slow, careful sentences, as if every word had been chosen with great thought. They explained that they were part of a large alliance of worlds called the Valari Concord, a group of species that had agreed to share knowledge, trade goods, and defend each other against common threats. They invited humanity to join. Earth's leaders argued for months. Some wanted to refuse, afraid of losing independence. Others wanted to accept everything at once, afraid of being left behind. In the end, humanity joined the Concord, but carefully, with many conditions. Earth would keep its own government. Earth would keep its own military. Earth would share only what it chose to share. That last point became very important. When Concord officials asked to see Earth's fleet, the humans in charge of the meeting felt a chill of fear. They knew, even then, that showing too much strength might make some species nervous, and showing too little might make others think humanity was weak and easy to push around. So a plan was made, quietly, by a small group of military leaders and scientists, who understood something the rest of the galaxy did not yet know about humans. Humans plan for the worst, even when things look fine. The fleet that was shown to the galaxy was called the Sol Guard. It had 200 ships, built using a mix of human engineering and technology shared by the Valari. It was strong enough to defend the solar system from small threats, but nowhere near strong enough to challenge any of the larger powers in the galaxy. To many alien observers, this seemed about right. Humans were new. Humans were still learning faster-than-light travel, still learning how to build proper starships, still catching up. A modest fleet made sense. What the galaxy did not know was that the Sol Guard was only the beginning. 10 years before, when the first alien ship had appeared over Geneva, humanity's leaders had held a secret meeting that no news channel ever reported. In that meeting, a woman named Admiral Sarah Chen stood in front of the presidents, prime ministers, and generals of the world, and said something that would shape the next decade. "We have no idea what is out there," she said. "We do not know if these Valari are friends, or if they are the first of many visitors, some of whom might not be so kind. We cannot know the truth of the galaxy from one meeting, so we must prepare for every outcome. We build one fleet to show the galaxy who we are. And we build more fleets that no one else needs to know about, in case the galaxy is worse than we hope." It was a bold plan, and a dangerous one. If discovered, it could destroy the trust humanity had just begun to build with the Valari and the rest of the Concord. But the leaders in that room, remembering the long, bloody history of their own planet, remembering how many wars had started because one side underestimated the other, agreed. Better to be ready and never need it, than to need it and not be ready. So, in secret, Earth began building 2 more fleets. The first hidden fleet was built in the Kyper belt, far past Neptune, using resources mined from icy asteroids that no telescope, human or alien, bothered to watch closely. This fleet was called the Kyper Fleet, and it was placed under the command of a quiet, serious officer named Admiral James Torres. Torres had been a submarine commander before the aliens came, a man used to hiding in the deep ocean, silent and patient. He understood, better than most, the value of staying unseen. The second hidden fleet was built even farther away, beyond the edge of the solar system, past the Oort cloud, in the cold, dark region where sunlight was only a distant memory. This fleet had no official name in any government file. The engineers who built it, half joking, called it the Ghost Fleet, and the name stuck. It was commanded by Admiral Elena Vasquez, a brilliant but private woman who had spent years designing stealth systems for the world's navies, before the world had even known aliens existed. The ships of the Ghost Fleet were built to be almost invisible, using technology that blended human ideas with secrets learned from careful study of Valari engineering, twisted and changed until even the Valari themselves would not recognize their own inventions inside these dark hulls. Building 3 fleets in secret was not easy. It took enormous amounts of money, resources, and effort, hidden inside asteroid mining projects and deep space research programs that no ordinary citizen questioned. It took years of careful lying to allies and rivals alike. It took thousands of engineers, scientists, and soldiers who understood that they could never speak of their work to anyone outside a very small circle. Many of them never saw their families for months at a time. Many of them wondered, quietly, if all this secrecy and sacrifice would ever matter. For years it seemed like it might not. The Valari Concord was, for the most part, peaceful. Its member species traded goods, shared scientific discoveries, and settled arguments through long, boring council meetings rather than war. Humanity sent representatives to these meetings, humans who learned to speak slowly and carefully like the Valari, who learned to bow to the tall Torun ambassadors with their feathered crests, who learned which alien species liked bright light and which preferred the dark. Not every species trusted humans. Some found humanity's history of constant wars and conflict deeply troubling. A few worried that a species so recently violent toward its own kind could not be trusted around others. There were rumors, whispered in council hallways, that humans were dangerous, unpredictable, still half wild compared to older, calmer civilizations. Humanity's representatives heard these whispers and said nothing, letting their actions speak instead. They kept their promises. They helped when help was needed. They showed only the Sol Guard, modest and unthreatening, and let the galaxy believe that was all there was. Then came the Krithos. The Krithos Empire lived on the far edge of Concord space, a large and aggressive civilization that had, for as long as anyone could remember, believed in only one law: the strong take what they want from the weak. For decades, the Krithos had stayed mostly quiet, busy with their own internal conflicts. But as humanity's 10th year in the Concord began, reports started coming in of Krithos raids on small, unprotected worlds near the border. At first, these were small incidents. A mining colony attacked. A trade ship stolen. The Concord Council debated what to do, as councils often do, slowly and carefully, while the Krithos grew bolder. Admiral Sarah Chen, now the commander of the Sol Guard and Earth's senior military voice at the Concord table, listened to these reports with growing unease. She had seen this pattern before, in Earth's own history: small raids, testing the waters, watching how the victims responded. It was the beginning of something bigger, and she said so, loudly, in council meetings, where most of the older species preferred calm words over warnings. "They are testing you," she told the assembled ambassadors. "Every raid tells them something about how you will respond. If you respond weakly, they will grow bolder. This is not new behavior. My own species has done exactly this, more than once, in our own bloody history." Some ambassadors listened, many did not. The Torun ambassador, a keen-eyed being named Vex Solon who had grown to respect the humans more than most of his colleagues, quietly agreed with Chen's warning and began pushing for stronger Concord patrols along the border. But the majority of the council believed the Krithos raids were isolated incidents, unworthy of a major military response. War was expensive, and peace, even a fragile peace, was cheaper. Back on Earth, the leaders who knew about the hidden fleets watched these events closely. In a secure bunker beneath the mountains of Colorado, President Marcus Webb, elected only 2 years before but already burdened with the secret his predecessors had carried, met with Admiral Chen, Admiral Torres, and Admiral Vasquez through a secure video link. "The council doesn't see it yet," Chen said, "but I do. This isn't going to stay small." "The Kyper fleet is ready," Torres said simply. He rarely said more than necessary. 600 ships. We could double the size of the Sol Guard overnight if we needed to. "The Ghost fleet is not ready to be seen," Vasquez added, her voice careful. "But it is ready to fight, if it must. 400 ships, and every one of them harder to detect than anything the Valari have built." Webb rubbed his eyes. He had not slept well in weeks. "We keep building. We keep waiting. If the Krithos attack a Concord world directly, if this becomes real war, we may need everything we have. But until then, the Sol Guard stays the face of humanity. No one outside this call knows the truth. Understood?" Everyone understood. It had been understood for 10 years. 3 weeks later, everything changed. A Krithos scout ship, faster and quieter than anything the Concord had encountered before, slipped past the border patrols, and entered the outer edge of the solar system, testing humanity's defenses the same way it had tested a dozen other systems before. It expected to find the same modest Solguard patrol ships that Concord records described. It expected an easy look at a young, weak species still learning to walk among the stars. Instead, deep in the Kyper belt, sensors aboard Admiral Torres's hidden fleet detected the intruder the moment it crossed an invisible line the humans had marked years before. Torres received the alert in the middle of the night, Earth time, and stared at the screen for a long moment before giving the order. "Do not engage," he said quietly. "Track it. Learn from it. Let it leave." The Krithos scout wandered through the outer solar system for 2 days, scanning, recording, gathering what it believed was valuable information about a young, unprepared species. It found the Solguard, exactly as expected. It found Earth, its cities glowing gently in the dark. It found nothing else. The hidden fleet stayed silent, stayed dark, stayed exactly where they had always been, unseen. When the scout finally turned and left, slipping back out toward Krithos territory, Admiral Chen received Torres's report in her office, overlooking the Solguard's main shipyard. She read it twice, then set it down, and looked out the window at the ships being prepared below, ships the whole galaxy already knew about. "They think they know us," she said softly to herself. "They have no idea." Far away, in the cold dark beyond the edge of the solar system, Admiral Vasquez stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the same sensor data scroll past on her own screens. The Ghost Fleet had not moved. It had not needed to. That, she thought, was exactly the point. For 10 years, humanity had shown the galaxy exactly one fleet, small and careful and unthreatening, while quietly building 2 more in the shadows, waiting for a day they hoped would never come. The Krithos scout had come and gone, seeing only what it was meant to see, carrying back a report that would soon convince its emperors that Earth was an easy target. They were wrong, but it would take a war to prove it. The Krithos scout ship returned to its empire, carrying reports that would shape the next stage of the war, though no one on Earth or in the Valari Concord knew it yet. Deep within Krithos space, in a war council chamber lit by dim red light, the scout's captain presented findings to a gathering of generals and warlords. Humanity, the report said, had a single modest fleet of about 200 ships, poorly armed compared to Krithos standards, guarding a system rich in resources and populated by a species still new to space travel. It was, the generals agreed, a tempting and easy target, though not yet worth the risk of open war with the whole Concord. For now, the Krithos Empire continued its slow, patient strategy. Strike the weak, avoid the strong, grow stronger with every raid. Small Concord worlds near the border kept disappearing from contact, one after another, their distress calls cut short, their fates unknown. The Concord Council argued and delayed, unwilling to believe that a full invasion was coming, even as the evidence piled up. Admiral Sarah Chen grew more frustrated with each passing month. She attended council meeting after council meeting, presenting data, pointing out patterns, warning that the raids were increasing in size and boldness. The Torun ambassador, Vex Solan, stood beside her more often now, adding his own voice to the warnings. Slowly, a small group of species began to take the threat seriously. Most still did not. Then the Krithos attacked Farah Prime. Farah Prime was a mid-sized Concord world, home to the Farani, a peaceful species of farmers and traders who had never fought a real war in their recorded history. When 300 Krithos warships appeared in Farani space without warning, the planet's small defense fleet was destroyed within hours. The Concord Council received the distress call in real time, listening in horror as Farani officers reported wave after wave of attacks, their voices growing more desperate, then finally falling silent. This time, the Council could not look away. An emergency session was called. Every member species was asked to send ships to help defend what remained of Farah Prime and push back the Krithos assault before the planet itself was invaded. Earth's response came quickly. President Marcus Webb, Admiral Chen, and the Concord's chief military coordinator all agreed that the Solguard would answer the call. It was, after all, the fleet the galaxy knew, the fleet that was supposed to represent humanity's contribution to the Concord's shared defense. Sending anything more would raise questions no one was ready to answer. Admiral Chen personally led 150 ships of the Soul Guard toward Farah Prime, leaving a smaller force behind to guard the solar system. It was the first time humanity's fleet would fight alongside other Concord species in a real battle, and every human aboard those ships understood the weight of that moment. They were not just fighting for Farah Prime, they were proving, in front of the whole galaxy, that humanity belonged among the stars. The journey took 6 days. When the Soul Guard arrived at the edges of Farani space, they found a battlefield already scarred by violence. Wrecked ships, human and alien alike, drifted silently in the dark, some still burning with slow orange fires that had no air to feed on, but somehow refused to fully die. Farah Prime itself was surrounded by a ring of Krithos warships, pounding the planet's surface with slow, deliberate bombardment, more interested in breaking the will of the defenders than in destroying the world outright. Chen's fleet joined a larger Concord force, already fighting to break through the Krithos blockade. Valari cruisers, Torun strike ships, and vessels from a dozen other member species, all working together under a joint command structure that was frankly a mess. Different species had different battle tactics, different communication systems, different ideas about acceptable risk. Coordinating them all was like trying to conduct an orchestra, where half the musicians spoke a different language. Chen quickly realized that humanity's Soul Guard, though smaller than many of the other fleets present, moved and fought with a speed and flexibility that surprised her allies. Human pilots, trained on a world with a long history of naval and air combat, adapted to changing situations faster than many of the older, more cautious species. Where Valari captains waited for detailed orders before adjusting their formations, human pilots reacted in seconds, breaking off attacks, regrouping, striking weak points the moment they appeared. It was not enough to win the battle outright, but it was enough to matter. Soul Guard ships punched a hole in the Krithos blockade, allowing supply and evacuation ships to slip through to the besieged planet below. Chen's own flagship took heavy damage doing it, absorbing fire meant for a Valari transport ship carrying wounded Farani civilians. Chen watched from her command chair as the shields flickered and failed on one side of her ship, watched the damage reports climb, and gave the order to hold position anyway. "We hold until that transport is clear," she said. "Then we fall back." They held. The transport escaped. Chen's ship, badly damaged, limped back to the rear of the formation, and for the first time, other Concord commanders began speaking of the Soul Guard with real respect rather than polite tolerance. But respect did not win the war. Over the following weeks, the battle for Farah Prime turned into a grinding, exhausting fight. The Krithos kept sending reinforcements, more ships than Concord intelligence had believed the Empire possessed. Slowly, painfully, the defenders were pushed back, losing ground, losing ships, losing lives. Farah Prime's surface, once green and peaceful, became scarred with craters. Millions of Farani were evacuated to nearby worlds, their homes left behind, possibly forever. Admiral Chen sent daily reports back to Earth, and each report grew grimmer than the last. In the secure bunker beneath the Colorado mountains, President Webb read these reports with a heavy heart, sitting across from Admiral Torres and Admiral Vasquez, who joined him by secure video link every evening to review the situation. "They're losing," Webb said one night, looking at the latest casualty figures. "Chen's fleet has taken 30% losses. The whole Concord defense is buckling." "The Kyper fleet could turn the tide," Torres said. 600 fresh ships would change everything at Farah Prime." "And the moment we send them," Webb replied, "the whole galaxy learns exactly what we've been hiding. Every ally, every enemy. There's no taking that back." Vasquez leaned forward. "Mr. President, if the Krithos win at Farah Prime, what happens next? Do they stop? Or do they keep pushing? Deeper into Concord territory? Closer to us?" No one in the room had a good answer. It was the same question that had haunted every leader who had known about the hidden fleets for the past 10 years. How do you decide the right moment to reveal a secret that could either save your species or destroy the fragile trust holding an entire alliance together? Webb made his decision carefully. "Not yet," he said. "The Soul Guard holds the line at Farah Prime as long as it can. We reinforce with everything we can send that doesn't reveal the Kyper or Ghost fleets. Repair crews, supply ships, whatever the Concord will accept from us openly. But we don't show our hand unless Farah Prime is truly about to fall. or unless the Krithos turned toward Earth itself. It was a gamble, and everyone in that room knew it. Chen's fleet, already battered, would have to hold on alone a little longer. Back at Farah Prime, Chen received Webb's orders with a tight, controlled anger she rarely allowed herself to show. She understood the reasoning. She even agreed with it, mostly. But watching her people die while 2 entire fleets sat idle back home was a special kind of torture that she carried silently, sharing it with no one, not even her closest officers. The battle ground on. Days became weeks. The Soul Guard, reduced now to barely 100 combat-ready ships, fought alongside a shrinking coalition of Concord allies, buying time for Farani evacuation ships to keep running, buying time for a solution that did not yet exist. Then, 3 weeks into the siege, Krithos intelligence ships began probing farther into Concord space, past Farah Prime, scanning systems that led, eventually, toward the outer edges of human territory. It was subtle at first, easy to miss among the chaos of the wider war. But Admiral Torres, watching sensor reports from his post in the Kyper belt, noticed the pattern immediately. "They're not just after Farah Prime," he told Webb during their nightly call. "They're mapping a path, and it leads toward us." Vasquez pulled up a star chart, tracing the Krithos scouting pattern with a steady finger. If Farah Prime falls, and they keep pushing in this direction, Sol Space becomes a target within 2, maybe 3 months. Webb stared at the map for a long time before speaking. "Then we prepare for both. Chen holds Farah Prime as long as she can. Torres, I want the Kyper fleet ready to move within 24 hours' notice. Full combat readiness. No more waiting for perfect timing. Vasquez, keep the Ghost Fleet dark, but I want every ship armed and crewed, ready to strike the instant we need them." "And if the Concord asks why our defenses are suddenly tightening?" Vasquez asked. "We tell them the truth," Webb said quietly, "that we're worried the war is coming home, just not the whole truth." That night, for the first time in 10 years, the Kyper fleet moved from its hidden position, shifting into a new formation closer to the inner solar system, still far enough away to avoid easy detection, but close enough to respond quickly if the moment came. 600 ships, built in secret over a decade, quietly repositioned themselves in the dark, waiting. At Farah Prime, Admiral Chen received word of the Krithos scouting activity near Sol Space, and felt a cold weight settle in her chest. She thought of home, of the cities she had sworn to protect, of the families who had no idea how close danger might be creeping. She thought of the 2 fleets sitting in the dark, ready but unseen, and wondered how much longer that secret could hold. She did not have to wonder for long. Within days, the Krithos, growing impatient with the stubborn resistance at Farah Prime, made a decision that would change the shape of the war entirely. Rather than continue grinding away at a defended world, their war council decided to split their forces, sending a smaller but still powerful fleet directly toward Sol Space, hoping to strike at what their scouts had reported as an easy, poorly defended target. They believed they were about to catch a young, weak species completely by surprise. They had no idea that 2 more fleets, built in silence and shadow for 10 long years, were waiting for exactly this moment. The Krithos fleet that broke away from the siege of Farah Prime numbered 250 warships, led by a commander named Zal Cordis, a veteran of a dozen border conquests, who had never once faced a defeat. Cordis had studied the scout reports about Sol Space carefully. 200 defense ships, poorly armed by Krithos standards, guarding a system with no serious allies nearby to send reinforcements in time. It seemed, to him, like the easiest campaign of his career. He expected the fight to be over within days, the human system added to the long list of worlds that had learned to fear the Krithos banner. He did not know about the Kyper fleet, quietly repositioned and waiting. He did not know about the Ghost fleet, sitting silent in the cold dark beyond the Oort cloud, its ships built specifically to avoid detection by sensors just like his own. He knew nothing of Admiral Torres, the patient former submarine commander, or Admiral Vasquez, the stealth expert who had spent years designing systems meant for exactly this kind of enemy. He knew only what the galaxy knew, that humanity had 1 fleet. On Earth, alarms rang out across military command centers the moment long-range sensors detected the Krithos fleet crossing into the outer edges of the solar system. President Webb was pulled from a late-night meeting and rushed to the secure bunker. where Admiral Chen, still recovering from the fighting at Farah Prime, joined by video link from her damaged flagship, now limping back toward home, at emergency speed, but still days away. "They're heading straight for us," said the duty officer, pointing at the tactical display. 250 ships, entering at the edge of Soul Guard patrol range. Estimated time to Earth orbit, 11 days, if they maintain current speed. Webb felt the weight of the moment settle over him like a physical thing. 11 days. 11 days to decide how much of humanity's secret to reveal, and when. "Options," he said, his voice steady despite everything. Admiral Chen spoke first, even through the static of a long-distance signal. "The Soul Guard Reserve, the ships I left behind, numbers about 50 combat-ready vessels. Against 250 Krithos warships, that's not a fight, that's a slaughter. The Kyper fleet can be in position within 3 days, Torres said. 600 ships. Even accounting for the element of surprise wearing off once we engage, that gives us better than 2-to-1 numbers against them." Vasquez spoke next, her voice calm as always. "The Ghost fleet can reach Sol space faster than the Kyper fleet, and undetected. If we want to hit them with something they truly do not expect, that is the fleet to use." Webb looked around the room at the officers and advisors gathered there, then closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of every argument he had heard over the past 10 years about when, and if, to reveal Earth's true strength. He thought about the Farani, whose homeworld still burned under Krithos bombardment. He thought about the small Soul Guard reserve fleet, brave crews who would fight and die defending Earth, even against impossible odds, simply because it was their duty. "We're not hiding anymore," he said finally. "Not from this. Torres, move the Kyper fleet into position. Vasquez, I want the Ghost fleet ready to strike, but held in reserve until the right moment. We fight this battle with everything we have." The order was given. Within hours, 600 ships of the Kyper fleet, built in secret over a decade, began moving from their hidden position toward the inner solar system, their crews finally allowed to know that the moment they had trained for had arrived. Many of them had joined the fleet as young recruits, spending years in near-total secrecy, unable to tell their own families what they truly did for a living. Now, at last, they would fight. Word spread quickly through Soul Guard Command, and then, carefully, through the highest levels of Concord leadership, that Earth possessed a second fleet no one had known about. The reaction among Concord officials ranged from shock to anger to relief. Some ambassadors, including several who had long distrusted humanity, felt betrayed, accusing Earth of deception and broken promises. Others, including the Tarun ambassador Vex Solon, saw it differently. "They did not lie to us," Solon said in an emergency council session, defending humanity, even as other species raised furious objections. "They simply did not tell us everything. Given how young this alliance still is, and how uncertain the galaxy remains, can any of us honestly say we would have done differently?" The debate would continue for weeks, long after the battle itself was decided. But for now, with a Krithos invasion fleet bearing down on Sol space, there was no time for arguments. There was only the coming fight. The Soul Guard reserve fleet, 50 ships strong, moved to intercept the Krithos at the outer edge of the solar system, buying time for the Kyper fleet to arrive. It was, everyone involved understood, a delaying action, not a battle they could win alone. The 50 ships, commanded by a young captain named Elias Marsh, took up defensive positions near Neptune's orbit and waited. When the Krithos fleet arrived, Commander Cortis wasted no time. His ships spread into an attack formation and began advancing on the small human force, expecting quick and total victory. Marsh's fleet fought back with everything they had, using hit-and-run tactics, striking at exposed flanks, retreating before Krithos ships could return fire in force. It was not enough to stop the invasion, but it slowed it, cost the Krithos time and a handful of damaged ships, and most importantly, it kept the invaders' attention focused forward, away from the approaching Kyper fleet. For 6 days, Marsh's small fleet fought a running battle across the outer solar system, losing ships one by one, falling back toward Earth in careful, controlled retreat. Every human pilot in that fleet understood they were not meant to win. They were meant to survive as long as possible, to buy time, to make the Krithos believe they were facing exactly the weak, disorganized defense force their scouts had reported. It worked better than anyone expected. Cortis, watching his sensors show a fleet retreating in apparent disarray, grew confident, even careless. He pushed his ships forward faster, eager to reach Earth and claim an easy victory before the War Council back home could question why the conquest was taking longer than a single day. On the 7th day, as the battered remains of the Sol Guard reserve fleet fell back toward Earth orbit, sensors detected a massive new fleet emerging from the outer solar system, moving at speeds that surprised even the Krithos' advanced tracking systems. 600 ships. The Kyper fleet had arrived. Commander Krithos received the sensor report with confusion, then disbelief, then something close to alarm. His analysts scrambled to make sense of the data, checking and rechecking their instruments, certain there had been some mistake. No records, no intelligence reports, nothing in the Krithos Empire's extensive files on the Valari Concord had ever mentioned a second human fleet of this size. Where did they come from? Krithos demanded, staring at the tactical display, as 600 unfamiliar ships spread into a wide, coordinated formation, cutting off his fleet's path toward Earth, and threatening to encircle his remaining forces. No one had an answer, because there was no answer in any file Krithos had access to. Humanity had built an entire second fleet, larger than the one the galaxy knew about, and hidden it so well that not even a technologically advanced empire capable of interstellar war had detected it. Admiral Torres, aboard his flagship at the head of the Kyper fleet, gave the order to engage. What followed was a very different kind of battle than the one Marsh's small delaying force had fought. The Kyper fleet was fresh, well supplied, and outnumbered the Krithos more than 2 to 1. Torres, drawing on years of submarine warfare experience and a decade of careful planning, employed tactics the Krithos had never encountered. Coordinated strikes from multiple angles, feints that drew Krithos ships out of formation, precise, patient attacks that avoided unnecessary losses while steadily grinding down the enemy fleet. Krithos, realizing too late that he had walked into a trap he never saw coming, tried to reorganize his forces, tried to break through the Kyper fleet's encirclement, and retreat back toward Krithos space. But Torres's ships, faster and better coordinated than the Krithos had believed possible, closed every gap before it could be used. The battle raged for nearly 2 full days. Ships burned and broke apart on both sides. Torres lost dozens of vessels, crews he had trained personally over the years, names he would remember for the rest of his life. But the Krithos lost far more. By the time Krithos finally gave the order to retreat, attempting to save whatever remained of his fleet, barely 80 of his original 250 ships remained combat-capable. Admiral Chen, finally arriving back at Earth with the battered remnants of her own fleet from Farah Prime, watched the final stages of the battle from Earth orbit, standing on the bridge of her repaired flagship, tears in her eyes at the sight of 600 ships she had known about but never seen in action, finally revealed to the galaxy in humanity's darkest hour. The retreating Krithos ships limped back toward the edge of the solar system, badly damaged, their commander humiliated, their intelligence about humanity proven catastrophically wrong. But the war was far from over. As Krithos' shattered fleet withdrew, sensors picked up new signals from deep space, reinforcements, sent from Krithos territory, the moment the first reports of unexpected resistance reached the Imperial War Council. A much larger fleet was already on its way, one that would arrive within weeks, determined to finish what Krithos had failed to accomplish. On Earth, the celebration of victory was brief and quiet, overshadowed by the knowledge that a greater storm was still coming. President Webb addressed the nation, and for the first time, told the truth about the Kyper fleet, though he still said nothing about the third fleet, hidden even deeper in the dark. Across the Valari Concord, the news of humanity's hidden second fleet spread quickly, reshaping how the galaxy saw this young, once underestimated species. Some species reacted with fear, wondering what else Earth might be hiding. Others, especially those who had fought and bled beside the Sol Guard at Farah Prime, felt something closer to relief and gratitude, knowing that a powerful ally stood ready to help defend the Concord in the fight still to come. In the cold, silent dark beyond the Oort cloud, Admiral Elena Vasquez received the reports of the battle, with quiet satisfaction and quiet worry. The Kyper fleet had won its fight, but at real cost, and a larger Krithos force was already inbound. She looked out at the 400 ships of the Ghost Fleet, still hidden, still unseen by any sensor in the galaxy, and wondered how much longer that secret could remain safe. She did not have to wonder much longer. The next battle, everyone understood, would decide far more than the fate of Sol Space. It would decide whether the Valari Concord could survive the Krithos threat at all. Word of the disaster at Sol Space reached the Krithos homeworld within days, carried by a fast courier ship that had broken away from Cortus's shattered fleet before the retreat was complete. The Imperial War Council, gathered in their great chamber beneath the capital city's red skies, listened to the report in stunned silence. A species they had judged weak, a system they had expected to conquer in a single day, had somehow destroyed 2/3 of an entire invasion fleet using ships that no intelligence report had ever mentioned. The Krithos Emperor, an old and ruthless being named Draxil Vorn, did not react with panic, as some of his generals feared he might. Instead, he reacted with cold, calculating anger. He had built his empire on a simple principle: never let weakness go unpunished, and never let an enemy believe they had won for good. He ordered the largest fleet the Krithos Empire had assembled in a generation to be sent to Sol Space, not merely to conquer it, but to make an example of it so severe that no other Concord species would dare underestimate the cost of resisting Krithos' power ever again. 900 warships. Led personally by Grand Admiral Torgan Vale, the most decorated commander in Krithos military history, a being who had conquered 11 worlds without ever losing a major fleet engagement. Vale studied every scrap of data recovered from Cortus's defeat, determined not to repeat the same mistakes. He would not underestimate this enemy again. He would bring overwhelming force, more than enough to crush whatever hidden strength Earth still possessed. On Earth, intelligence networks throughout the Valari Concord picked up signs of the massive Krithos fleet gathering weeks before it departed. Admiral Chen, Admiral Torres, and the Concord's military coordinators watched the buildup with growing dread. 900 ships was more than double the combined strength of the Sol Guard and the Kyper fleet, even accounting for reinforcements the Concord had finally agreed to send after the battle at Farah Prime and the revelation of humanity's second fleet. President Webb called an emergency meeting in the Colorado bunker, joined this time not only by Chen, Torres, and Vasquez, but by senior Concord military liaisons who had, in the wake of recent events, finally been granted deeper access to humanity's defense planning. 900 ships, Webb said, looking at the assembled group. Even with Concord reinforcements, our combined fleets number perhaps 700, and many of those ships are still repairing damage from the last battle. Vasquez spoke, her voice steady despite the grim numbers. The Ghost Fleet remains ready. 400 ships, undetected, unaccounted for in any Krithos intelligence report. If we commit them at the right moment, we do not just add numbers, we add complete surprise. The Concord military liaison, a Valari officer named Praxis Serene, raised a question that had been on everyone's mind since the Kyper fleet's existence became known. How many fleets does your species have, Admiral Vasquez? The Concord Council will demand answers eventually. Trust, once broken, is not easily repaired. Vasquez met his gaze without flinching. 3. The Sol Guard, which the galaxy has always known. The Kyper fleet, which the galaxy now knows. And the Ghost Fleet, which no one outside this room has known until this moment. There are no more hidden beyond that. I give you my word. Praxis Serene considered this for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then let us hope 3 is enough. The plan that emerged over the following days was built around the element of surprise that the Ghost Fleet still represented. The Sol Guard and Kyper fleet, along with Concord reinforcements arriving from a dozen member worlds, would take up defensive positions throughout the solar system, presenting themselves as the entirety of the available defense. The Ghost Fleet would remain hidden, positioned in a wide arc beyond normal detection range, ready to strike the moment Grand Admiral Vale committed his forces to battle. It was a dangerous gamble. If the Ghost Fleet was somehow detected before the right moment, the element of surprise would be lost, and Sol Space might not survive the resulting battle. But Admiral Chen, reviewing the plan with the other commanders, felt it was the best chance they had. Vale believes he is bringing overwhelming force against everything we have, she said. Let him believe that, right up until the moment it stops being true. The Krithos fleet arrived 18 days later, 900 warships emerging from deep space, in a formation so vast, it seemed to blot out the stars behind it. Grand Admiral Vale, watching his sensor displays fill with data about the defending Concord forces, felt confident. Combined Concord and human forces numbered roughly 700 ships, a significant force, but one his 900 could still defeat through sheer weight of numbers and superior firepower. He gave the order to advance. The battle that followed would later be remembered across the galaxy as the Battle of Sol, one of the largest and most important engagements in the history of the Valari Concord. Vale's fleet struck the combined human and Concord defenses with brutal force, driving deep into the formation, trading ship for ship in a grinding, desperate fight. Admiral Chen commanded the Sol Guard from the center of the line, coordinating with Concord commanders whose species had, only weeks before, doubted whether humanity deserved a place among them. Now they fought side by side, human and Valari and Torun and a dozen other species, united against a common enemy. Admiral Torres, leading the Kyper fleet on the northern flank, employed the same patient, calculated tactics that had won the earlier battle, drawing Krithos ships into overextended positions, striking supply lines, forcing gaps in Vale's formation wherever possible. But 900 ships was simply too many to hold back through tactics alone. Slowly, painfully, the defending line began to buckle. 6 hours into the battle, with Concord losses mounting, and Krithos ships pressing ever closer to Earth's orbital defenses, Admiral Chen made the call that everyone had been waiting for. "Admiral Vasquez," she said over the secure command channel, "it's time." Deep in the outer solar system, in the cold dark where the Ghost Fleet had waited unseen for 10 long years, Admiral Elena Vasquez received the order and closed her eyes for just a moment, thinking of everything that had led to this point. The years of secrecy, the sacrifices of thousands of crew members who had never been able to speak of their work, the weight of a decision that would finally, irrevocably, reveal the last of humanity's hidden strength to the entire galaxy. "All ships," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the fleet's internal channels. "Engage." 400 ships of the Ghost Fleet, built using stealth technology more advanced than anything the Krithos or even the Valari possessed, dropped their concealment fields simultaneously and surged forward from a wide arc behind Vale's forces. To Krithos sensors, it was as if 400 warships had appeared from nowhere, materializing out of empty space, with no warning at all. Grand Admiral Vale's confident advance collapsed into chaos within minutes. His fleet, already engaged with the Sol Guard and Kyper fleet from the front, now found itself struck from behind by a force he had never known existed, never detected, never even suspected. Krithos ships, caught between two fires, scrambled to reorganize, but the sudden, devastating surprise attack had already broken the momentum of their assault. "Impossible," Vale muttered, staring at his tactical display, as reports of the third human fleet flooded in. 3 fleets. They had 3 fleets, and we knew of only one. The tide of the battle turned decisively in the following hours. With the Ghost Fleet striking from behind, and the Sol Guard and Kyper fleet holding firm from the front, Vale's forces found themselves surrounded, cut off from retreat, forced into a desperate fight for survival, rather than the easy conquest they had expected. Krithos ships began falling one after another, unable to match the coordinated assault from 3 directions at once. Vale himself fought on with grim determination, refusing to surrender even as his fleet's numbers dwindled. He personally led a breakout attempt, gathering his remaining flagships in a desperate charge aimed at Earth's orbital defenses, hoping that even in defeat, he might still deliver a symbolic blow against the planet that had humiliated his empire twice. Admiral Chen anticipated the move. She had studied Krithos' tactics carefully since the battle at Farah Prime, and she recognized the pattern of a cornered commander seeking one last, desperate victory. She positioned the Sol Guard's remaining ships directly in Vale's path, personally taking her flagship to the front of the formation. The final clash between Chen's flagship and Vale's command vessel became, in the years that followed, one of the most retold moments of the entire war. 2 heavily damaged ships, commanded by 2 exhausted admirals, exchanged devastating fire at close range while the battle raged around them. Chen's ship took critical damage, losing power to entire sections, but held together long enough to land a final, decisive strike against Vale's shields, breaching them completely. Grand Admiral Torgun Vale's flagship went dark moments later, drifting silently amid the wreckage of the battle he had been so certain he would win. With their commander's ship disabled and their fleet's numbers reduced to barely 100 surviving vessels, The remaining Krithos forces broke and fled, scattering back toward the edge of Concord space, in complete disarray. The Battle of Sol was over. Humanity's three fleets, working together for the first time in full view of the galaxy, had done what no single fleet could have accomplished alone. Across Sol space, exhausted crews aboard the Sol Guard, the Kyper fleet, and the newly revealed Ghost fleet began the long, difficult process of counting losses and beginning repairs. Thousands had died in the battle, humans and Concord allies alike, but Earth had held. The Krithos invasion had been broken. And for the first time in 10 years, the entire galaxy finally understood the truth. The species they had once dismissed as young, weak, and easily conquered had been hiding not one fleet, but three, all along. In the weeks that followed the Battle of Sol, the galaxy could talk of little else. News of the fighting spread quickly through Concord space, carried by traders, diplomats, and news services eager to report on what many were already calling the most dramatic military reversal in recent memory. A young species, barely a decade into its membership in the Valari Concord, had not only survived an invasion by one of the galaxy's most feared empires, but had done so by revealing not one, not two, but three separate war fleets, the last of which had remained completely undetected for 10 full years. The reactions across the Concord were mixed and often complicated. Some species, particularly those who had long viewed humanity with suspicion, felt a new wave of unease. If Earth could hide an entire fleet of 400 advanced warships without detection, what else might they be capable of hiding? Ambassadors from several cautious member worlds demanded formal explanations, insisting that such secrecy violated the spirit, if not the letter, of Concord membership agreements. Other species felt something closer to relief and gratitude. The Farani, whose homeworld had been saved from complete destruction thanks to the earlier arrival of the Sol Guard at Farah Prime, sent an official delegation to Earth expressing deep thanks, along with an offer of close alliance for generations to come. The Torun, led by Ambassador Vex Solan, publicly praised humanity's courage and skill in the final battle, arguing before the full Concord Council that Earth's caution, however unusual, had ultimately saved countless lives across the alliance. President Marcus Webb, along with Admiral Sarah Chen, Admiral James Torres, and Admiral Elena Vasquez, was called before an emergency session of the Concord Council to formally explain humanity's decade of hidden fleet building. It was, by all accounts, a tense and difficult meeting, held in the Great Council Chamber on the Valari homeworld, with representatives from every member species watching closely. Webb spoke plainly, without excuses, laying out the full history of the decision made 10 years earlier, in the early, uncertain days after first contact. He explained the fear that had driven it, a fear born from humanity's own long history of war and betrayal, a fear that a galaxy full of unfamiliar species might not be as peaceful as it appeared, a fear that being caught unprepared could mean the end of everything humanity had only just begun to build among the stars. We did not build these fleets to threaten the Concord, Webb told the assembled council. We built them because we did not yet know if the Concord could be trusted, and because history has taught us, painfully, that unprepared nations often do not survive long enough to learn from their mistakes. We kept our word in every treaty we signed. We never used these hidden fleets against any Concord member. We used them, in the end, to defend this alliance when it needed defending most. Admiral Chen spoke next, describing the battle at Farah Prime and the losses the Sol Guard had suffered fighting alongside Concord allies, long before anyone knew a second or third human fleet existed. We bled for this alliance before you ever knew our full strength, she said. We would have bled for it regardless. The council debated for days after the humans departed, weighing trust against fear, gratitude against caution. In the end, a formal resolution was passed, one that acknowledged humanity's actions as, while unusual, ultimately taken in good faith and in defense of the Concord itself. Earth was asked, and agreed, to be more transparent about future military developments, a request that President Webb accepted without hesitation. The age of hidden fleets, at least in secret, was over. There was no need for it any longer. The galaxy now understood exactly what humanity was capable of. Back on Earth, the public reaction to the revelations was its own kind of storm. For 10 years, citizens had known only about the Sol Guard, believing it to be humanity's entire contribution to galactic defense. Learning that their government had secretly built 2 additional fleets, spending vast resources and keeping the truth from millions of people, sparked intense debate. Some citizens felt betrayed by the deception. Others understood the reasoning, especially after seeing how close Earth had come to catastrophe during the Krithos invasion. President Webb addressed the nation directly, explaining the decisions made by leaders a decade before his own presidency, decisions he had inherited and ultimately chosen to honor and complete. "We are a young species in a very old and very large galaxy," he said in his address. "We did not know, 10 years ago, whether we had found friends or predators. We chose to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. I understand if that choice troubles some of you. But I ask you to consider what might have happened at Sol Space if that preparation had never been made." Slowly, over the following months, the anger softened into something more complicated. Pride, mixed with lingering unease, mixed with a new sense of humanity's place in a much larger universe. The crews of the Kyper fleet and the Ghost fleet, finally able to speak openly about their years of hidden service, were welcomed home as heroes, even by those who still had questions about the secrecy that had defined their service. Admiral Torres retired quietly from active command a year after the battle, spending his remaining years teaching younger officers the patient, careful tactics that had won the day at Sol. Admiral Vasquez remained in service, eventually taking command of a new, openly acknowledged Fourth Fleet, one built this time with full Concord knowledge and cooperation, a symbol of the trust that had slowly been rebuilt between humanity and its allies. Admiral Chen was promoted to serve as humanity's permanent senior military representative to the Valari Concord Council, a position she used to advocate strongly for closer cooperation between all member species, arguing that no single fleet, human or otherwise, should ever again have to stand alone against a threat like the Krithos. The Krithos Empire itself, badly weakened by the loss of Grand Admiral Vale's fleet, entered a long period of internal turmoil. Emperor Draxil Vorn, humiliated by the defeat, faced growing unrest among his own generals, some of whom argued that continuing aggression against the Concord was no longer worth the risk. Border raids continued for a time, smaller and more cautious than before, but the great invasion the Krithos had once planned never came again. The galaxy had learned, in the harshest possible way, that the Valari Concord, with humanity now firmly established as one of its most capable defenders, was not an easy target. Years later, historians across a dozen species would still study the Battle of Sol as a turning point, not just in the war against the Krithos, but in how the galaxy understood a still young species that had joined the Concord with careful, quiet caution and left it as one of the Alliance's most respected military powers. Children on Farah Prime, rebuilt now with help from Concord worlds including Earth, grew up hearing stories of the humans who arrived with a single small fleet and, when the moment came, revealed 2 more that no one had ever seen coming. On Earth, a simple monument was built outside the Sol Guard's main shipyard, listing the names of every crew member lost in the defense of Sol Space, human and Concord ally alike. Beneath the names, a short inscription captured what so many had come to understand about that long, difficult decade of secrecy and sacrifice. The galaxy believed we stood alone with one fleet. We were never as small as we appeared, and we were never truly alone. We simply waited for the moment we were needed, and when it came, we were ready. Admiral Sarah Chen, standing before that monument on the day it was unveiled, thought back to the first meeting, 10 years before, when a small group of frightened, determined leaders had decided to prepare for a galaxy they did not yet understand. She thought of Torres in his submarine days, of Vasquez designing stealth systems no one believed Earth would ever need, of the thousands of crew members who had given years of silence and sacrifice to a secret that finally, in the end, had saved them all. The galaxy had thought humanity had one fleet. Earth had been hiding 3, and in the end, that quiet, careful preparation had not just saved a single world, it had saved an entire alliance of worlds, and given humanity a place among the stars that no one, not even Earth's own people, could have fully imagined 10 years before.